The Tourist is indeed a gripping movie with a brilliant cast.
Whoa, whoa. Here I come.
It's not every day that you see Jack Sparrow, Lara Croft, Vision, and James Bond sharing the same screen. While the movie may evoke mixed feelings due to its lack of deeper substance, the romantic relationship between the two main characters is undeniably heartfelt and emotional, reminiscent of the love between Rose and Jack in Titanic. Here's a recap of movie The Tourist. Paris. A woman named Elise is being followed by the French police, who are cooperating with Scotland Yard. She sits in a cafe, sipping tea, when suddenly she receives a letter from a courier. As the courier leaves, the police stop him, suspecting he might be Alexandre Pierce. Meanwhile, Elise reads the letter, which turns out to be from Alexandre Pierce, her former lover, containing precise instructions for further actions, aware of police surveillance. According to the letter, she is to board the train to Venice at 8:22 and choose someone of his build, to make the police believe it's him. Elise burns the letter and leaves the cafe, while the police immediately rush to retrieve it, but nothing remains of it. One of the officers takes the remnants of the letter, while the woman heads to the train station. She enters the station at the moment when people are leaving, making it difficult for them to observe her, and she boards the train, eluding them. At Scotland Yard, Inspector John Atchison, who is leading the investigation into Alexander Pierce, sits in the office of Chief Inspector Jones. Jones reviews the data of a courier caught in Paris, as Atchison suspects that Pierce underwent plastic surgery and the courier is actually Pierce. However, the chief inspector has a different opinion, stating that even though Pierce has £744 million in illegal assets, the chances of him posing as a courier are slim. Jones adds that the costs of such an operation would be too high to continue without any leads. Meanwhile, police in Paris try to determine the contents of the burned letter, and they manage to read that Elise and Alexander are to meet on the train to Venice. Soon after, Elise boards the designated train and looks for someone who resembles Pierce in build so that Scotland Yard could believe it's him after plastic surgery. She sits next to an American named Frank Tupelo. The man is surprised but also charmed by Elise. After a brief conversation about spy novels, Elise instructs him to invite her to dinner. During dinner, Elise tries to figure out who Frank really is. He tells her he's a math teacher. Meanwhile, a police officer on the train takes a photo of Frank and sends it to Scotland Yard, suspecting Frank is Pierce. The photo is forwarded to the Italian Interpol, and the police wait for him at the station. Soon it turns out that Frank is just a teacher and a regular tourist, so the operation is called off. The train arrives at its destination, and in the meantime, a Scotland Yard employee sees the photo of Frank and thinks it's Pierce, so he calls British gangster Reginald Shaw, informing him that Pierce is in Venice. After leaving the train station, Frank checks the map when suddenly Elise calls out to him from a boat and proposes that he join her. When they reach the Hotel Danielle, Elise encourages him to come with her. They pick up the keys to a beautiful room reserved by Pierce, and Elise tells Frank to make himself comfortable while someone unrelated to the police watches them. Shaw lands in Venice and orders his men to find Pierce alive, as he needs to know where his money is. In the evening, Elise and Frank go out for dinner, and Elise confesses to him that she will meet a certain man in Venice. When Frank asks who this man is, she replies that he is different from anyone she knows. They then return to the room and enjoy drinks, when Elise notices flowers containing an invitation to a ball. While on the balcony, Elise kisses Frank, while they are being watched by Shaw's men. Later, they go to sleep in separate rooms, and Frank dreams of her during the night. In the morning, Frank is awakened by a waiter who brings him breakfast. When he looks into her room, he sees she is not there. As the waiter leaves, Shaw's men enter unnoticed. Frank is surprised by their presence, and when they show their guns, he locks himself in the bathroom and calls reception, but the receptionist doesn't understand what he's trying to say. When shots are fired, Frank jumps out of the window onto the roof of the adjacent building. He escapes running along the roof, but when the men chase him, he jumps off the balcony, hitting an Italian policeman, and then is caught by the police. At the police station, Frank explains that someone tried to kill him and that he got involved in something. He continues, saying that Elise's lover is being pursued by these people, and they think it's Frank. However, the officer doesn't believe him because the officer Frank stumbled upon claims it was an attack on him. Then Frank is taken to a cell. In the night, the officer tells him that what he's saying is true and that he's not safe here, then takes him out of the cell. During the boat journey, the officer explains to him that Shaw thinks Frank is Alexander Pierce, who stole his money, and they've put a bounty on him. When they stop, the officer meets Shaw's men, and they hand over money for delivering Frank. Frank can't escape because he's chained to the boat when suddenly another boat driven by Elise appears from behind. She throws him a line, he ties it to the boat, and they start to escape. The men chase them and shoot at Elise. At one point, one of them jumps from a bridge onto Frank's boat and tries to cut the line, so Elise reverses her boat, causing a crash. As she accelerates, the handle to which Frank and Elise's boat are attached breaks off, causing Frank to end up in the water. After a moment, Elise pulls Frank out of the water and they sail beyond Venice. When Reginald finds out about this, he kills one of his men. While Elise tries to unlock the handcuffs, Frank asks why someone wants to kill him, and she responds that it's because she kissed him, as Reginald thinks he's Alexander Pierce. Frank learns that Pierce was Shaw's banker and stole $2 billion from him. Shaw owns many casinos and brothels, and when he found out about his wife's lovers, besides them, he also killed her. When he asks her why Pierce robbed Shaw, Elise says it's just who he is. Elise apologizes to Frank for getting him involved, and he responds that he doesn't regret their kiss. In the morning, they arrive at the airport, and Elise sails away, expressing regret that they didn't meet in another life. When Frank sees Elise sailing away, he confesses his love to her. Then Elise sails to the government building and introduces herself as a British special agent. In the building, she meets with Atchison and informs him that she is ready to help him find Pierce to prevent further harm. It turns out that Elise was supposed to work undercover against Pierce, but she fell in love with him and resigned from her job until now. She tells Atchison that she will expose him tonight at the ball and assures him that she will wear a wiretap. In the evening, Elise appears at the ball she was invited to. Atchison and his men are also present, observing her. Suddenly, a man tosses her another letter, and Elise tries to catch it, thinking it's from Pierce. At that moment, Frank stands in her way. They start dancing, but Elise asks him to leave the room, to which Frank responds that he'll leave only with her. Eventually, Elise confesses to him that he was just a pawn in her plan and that she used him. She asks him once again to leave, after which she walks away alone. When Frank tries to follow her, two of Atchison's men grab him and lead him away. Elise opens the letter and finds a key along with information about the time and location of the meeting. She boards a boat and heads in that direction. Reginald Shaw follows her, with Atchison trailing behind. On the boat with Atchison is also Frank, who is teased by Atchison, claiming to know that Frank is Pierce, then laughs and tells him that until operation is over, he'll remain on the boat. Elise arrives at the location and enters the building indicated by Pierce, opening the door with the key. As she enters the room, Shaw appears. He states that when someone robs him, he not only kills them, but also their entire family, adding that he once loved Alexander until he betrayed him. He asks where the safe with the money is, to which Elise responds that she doesn't know. Meanwhile, Atchison and Frank eavesdrop on the situation, and Frank asks Atchison to have his men intervene because Shaw might kill her. Atchison reveals to him that Elise is a special agent and is capable of handling herself. After a moment, a translator arrives to interpret Reginald's conversation with his men. He explains that Elise truly doesn't know where the safe is, and if Pierce doesn't show up within 5 minutes, they'll kill her. The sniper requests permission to shoot, but Atchison refuses, believing Pierce will arrive. Shaw pulls out a knife, ready to strike, but Elise points out the location of the safe. When Shaw opens the safe, he orders her to unlock it with the code. At the same time, the sniper informs Atchison that someone is approaching, revealed to be Frank, who escaped from the boat. Elise tries to enter the code, but it's incorrect. At that moment, Frank enters the room, introducing himself as Alexander Pierce. He claims that if Elise is released, he'll open the safe. Elise tries to convince them that he's not Pierce, and Reginald also has doubts because Frank bears no resemblance to Pierce. However, Frank explains that any differences are due to plastic surgery he underwent. Reginald threatens to kill Elise if Frank doesn't open the safe. As Frank approaches the safe, Elise confesses her love to him. At the same time, Chief Inspector Jones boards the boat and authorizes the snipers to shoot. The shots kill Shaw and his men, and Frank and Elise embrace. Atchison and the other officers enter the room, just as they hear over the radio that the police have captured Pierce, who was near the building. As they leave, Elise confesses to Frank that she loves both him and Pierce. At that moment, Frank opens the safe with the code. When Elise realizes that Frank is indeed Pierce, she kisses him. Atchison reaches the alleged Pierce, and the man explains that he receives messages and money from an unknown man with information on where he should be. Atchison realizes that Pierce is behind this and is furious that he has deceived them again. When the police return to the room and detonate the safe, inside they find a check for £744 million, which Pierce owed to the British government in overdue taxes. Jones says the operation is over, but Atchison disagrees, noting that they haven't caught Pierce, who is wanted in several countries. However, Jones argues that they have recovered the stolen money, and Pierce actually robbed a deceased gangster, so there's no point in pursuing him further. Elise and Frank sail away in a boat, happy to finally be together.